My personal favorite top 5 breakdowns that I did in 24. Well, in number 5 place, I have my breakdown, my pre-fight breakdown of Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou. Now, this did garner a lot of views, which kind of bewildered me a little bit. That's not necessarily why I would rank it number 5. I say that I feel I did a pretty good job of analyzing both fighters. Now, I did not call the KO, but I think I outlined why I thought Joshua would prevail in that matchup, in spite of Francis Ngannou being known as this sort of deadly one-punch KO artist. My 4th favorite fight breakdown that I did was Derek Chisora versus JOYCE. Now, I stated up front that I felt that Chisora stood a chance to defeat JOYCE, and in fact, this went against the sort of popular opinion that Chisora was too old, and I guess also based on some of Chisora's previous performances, the fight fans felt that JOYCE would prevail. Now, in fact, in the fight, I feel that Derek Chisora probably exceeded our expectations in terms of his performance, and JOYCE, on the other hand, kind of underperformed in that matchup. In fact, at this point, I feel that JOYCE kind of showed us that he may be done. He just did not look fundamentally sound in that fight. So it remains to be seen what Team JOYCE decides to do. But I think that was a telling performance that perhaps it's time for JOYCE to consider a farewell fight or just hang it up. My 3rd favorite pre-fight breakdown was my breakdown of Artur versus Dmitry BIVOL. Now, not to pat myself on the back, but I did feel that Beterbiew would in fact prevail over BIVOL. And again, that went against popular opinion. Many other fight analysts said they thought BIVOL is going to outbox Beterbiew, no problem. You know, Beterbiew is too old, his knees are bad, etc. But that turned out to not be the case, in spite of some folks feeling that the majority decision was somewhat controversial. I feel that Beterbiew did in fact prevail in that fight, mainly because Dmitry BIVOL had to basically fight against himself and restrain himself from doing his sort of typical Eastern European style, very, I wouldn't call it a probing jab, but a very active jab, hand held far away from one's face, which he knew would be a big problem versus Beterbiew. So I suppose we'll resolve the controversy in February on the Riyadh season card, where Beterbiew will rematch with BIVOL. My 2nd most favorite pre-fight breakdown was my breakdown of Martin Bakole versus Jared Anderson. Now, I will again repeat my sort of prejudice against Jared Anderson because he's just never been someone I favor, simply because of his crying videos. He's gone out of his way to post several videos of himself, you know, crying and saying, "Oh, I'm too talented, too young, this is too much pressure," and that to me is just an absolute turnoff to see in a fighter. I don't know if that's a generational thing where Anderson feels that somehow that appeals to his generation, but it's certainly a turnoff to those of us from not Gen Z. Now, I did feel that Martin Bakole could certainly prevail over Anderson and knock him out, which is what he did. Again, many of the boxing pundits felt that Anderson was simply too slick for Bakole, but that just absolutely turned out to not be the case. I don't know if Anderson is going to return to the ring. He really got damaged by Martin Bakole in that fight. And I don't know if you guys saw this footage of Bob Arum trying to console Jared Anderson in the change room afterwards. He says, "Don't you worry about a thing. We'll make this so as if it never happened. You'll come right back. You'll be right back in there." Guys, look, when Bob Arum says something like that, you got to know that it's basically 180 degrees from the truth. Bob Arum's telling him basically, "Kid, you're done." Because look, Bob Arum is the guy who tells the whole world, you know, this week I'm telling you the truth, last week I lied, when he's called out on the stand. Remember, Bob Arum is an attorney. He was the Attorney General. In any case, I think, in my opinion, Jared Anderson is done. I don't know what Bob Arum does with him, if he wants to start investing more money in building Anderson's confidence back up by throwing him 3 or 4 easy fights. I mean, that remains to be seen. But in my opinion, I don't think Aram's going to invest anymore in Anderson. That basically means Anderson's going to have to find a new promoter. Now, my number one pre-fight breakdown for 24 was, I think, Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua. Because I did feel that Dubois was capable of stopping Joshua, given Dubois' momentum and his very technical defeat of Filip Hrgović. Now, many felt that Dubois simply wasn't experienced enough to defeat Joshua, but I felt that not only his momentum, but also the fact that he seemed to have turned a corner in terms of his technical work with his current trainers. Now, of course, in 25, we get to look forward to Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker, which I think will be a fantastic matchup. I really have a ton of respect for both men as fighters and in terms of the progress they've made in their career over the last couple of years. So overall, I'm giving myself a pat on the back for these 5 pre-fight breakdowns, mainly because in some cases I went against so-called popular opinion. But I want to hear from you. What was your favorite pre-fight breakdown from 24? Please let me know in the comments below, and thank you very much for listening.